Okay, so it's an amazing pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about our journey at Skylight and how we built our company by staying very small to be able to be big, which is what we're doing now. So what we did, we founded Skylight about 4 years ago, and even though we raised venture capital funding along the way, we actually decided to stay deliberately very small and focus more on building our business, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we did that. When you raise money, the pressure to go quickly is really large because it's really easy to spend money, right? Like, it's very easy to spend money. What's very hard is to actually build your business. So the question is, why go slow? And what's the advantage? And why do we think it's actually beneficial for us to have gone slow? Well, the blunt truth of it is, early on in your business, actually probably throughout your business, but in particularly early on, you are going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to choose the wrong service, the wrong product, the wrong customers, the wrong market, the wrong sales approach. But the trick is, if you have a small and nimble team, you can actually shift very easily. You can change strategy. A large team is actually an inhibitor to business model evolution, and that's what you need very, very early on. So that's why we chose to go very slow. So let me show you our profile. So we actually started, like I said, 4 years ago. We had a bit of angel funding, and we spent 1.5 years staying 3 people until we did our seed financing. And it was at that point that we had to resist the external pressure and internal pressure, to be honest, to start building up quickly once we had money in the bank. So we stayed slow right through seed extension, and it wasn't until we had a clear sight line to Series A that we really started ramping. And actually now we are 50 people. A year ago this time we were actually 10. And how the approach that we took is that first phase, we really focused on proving there was a market. The second phase, we focused on figuring out how we were going to address the market. And then as we ramped a little bit to test the solution, and we felt like those were the 3 big pillars we had to prove out in order to close the Series A round. And what I'm going to do, staying small is actually hard, especially when there's a lot you're trying to figure out. So I'm going to share with you a few of the tricks and hacks that we did in order to prove out these business model components to set ourselves up well for fundraising, but still keeping the team small. So the first thing we did, this was all about figuring out finding the market, is one thing we did spend a lot of money on was advertising. So we spent money Facebook, Google, we built landing pages, all of these things. We actually did this before we had a product and before we had a service. So we were able to try different value props, figure out the proposition, figure out the customer base, and then we got the leads in, and then we just didn't follow up. It's kind of like thinking about building a company. Say you're going to make shoes, and you want to build shoes on the or want to sell shoes on the internet, or sell them on Facebook. It's like doing the Facebook ads before you have the shoes to make sure you're making the right shoes. So it feels a little awkward at the time, but what it ended up being is we actually changed, I can tell you, about 10 to 15 times what we were selling, and it allowed us to iterate on that without spending time and money on technology build in the background. And it also allowed us to have a secured acquisition funnel and acquisition channel before we even had the service ready. So it positioned us well for our seed series funding that came after that. So once we had secured the customer channel, was all about building technology in the simplest way. And this is one of my favorite hacks. We wanted to build very robust tools for our customers, but the time we would have had to invest in the money in our technology stack would have been too great. So we actually built the tools in Google Sheets, and then we embedded the Google Sheets right into our website. These are actually screenshots of our website. And so we could change them literally down to the minute. Like, the customer could be on the phone and we could be changing the Google Sheets. And so it let us iterate and actually create really robust prototypes. And from there, we could figure out how to build them. So it was a very, very quick way to get really good feedback, again, without investing in technology. One of the other things we did was actually using people instead of technology. So once we'd figured out what we wanted to build, we then needed to get it into the market. we actually built very structured, almost machine-readable types of processes. But instead of putting it into code, we actually had people manage it. It means the feedback loop is very, very fast, and the iterative loop is very, very fast. But the key of what we did is, as we built this very structured processes done by people, we made sure we put a lens on it that we knew we were going to automate it in the future and digitize it in the future. So how we set it up was, let's build it with people and automate later. So right now, as we finally have our funding, we can actually digitize these elements. And a few other last things that I want to throw on that I feel like we did a really good job on when we were building our team, and advice I want to give is, one thing is we're actually a San Francisco-based company, San Francisco-based customers, but actually almost fully Toronto-based team. We actually have over 40 people here. And so we're really playing the talent arbitrage game and getting the best of the talent, but being able to serve customers in the US. And another thing that we did is actually we have no office. So this to me is game changing, and I'm working in the most efficient environment I have worked in my 20-year career. We work in 2 distributed hubs, but we all work in a video-connected remote way. But the advantage of actually, so you have that efficiency of working remotely, but the advantage of having distributed hubs is you can actually get together in person. Like tonight, there's about 20 Skylight members in the audience, as you met some of them already. And another thing I just want to throw in there is we built a culture of diversity early on, and that's diversity from an age, gender, and ethnicity standpoint early on, because I really believe that's a foundation of a strong team. It is much harder to do later. If you get it early on, it really drives into a very strong team. So I hope some of these tips have given you some food for thought, and I welcome any questions.
Stand up. Come on, get up.
Guys, so for those newbies, we do standing ovations at TechTO, all right? So let's try that again. Say thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
All right, get up, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll take questions.
Hi, my name is Erez. I'm actually Chief of Operations of Hire. It's a startup that's based here in Toronto. And I'm curious, how do you do operations in Toronto to San Francisco or the Valley, if you can expand on that?
Yeah, our full operations team is here. We're actually a renovation company, which makes it even more surprising. But we focus on any action that's being done. We identify whether it has to be done locally or could it be done digitally or remotely. And so we've broken down all of the tasks on a renovation project and isolated anything that doesn't need to be done physically with a hammer in your hand in the house can be done remotely. So we manage it all from here. We leverage a lot of digital tools. We leverage a lot of hacks that we're digitizing along the way.
Thank you so much for the talk. As you're going through the seed stage and as you're constantly changing the marketing and thinking about the product, how do you effectively communicate that amongst the small group of people that are within there? And what are kind of the guiding principles that you keep in mind as you're building out this product?
So I think the key is, as we talked about, change is hard for teams, right? And that's actually one of the reasons why we stayed very small, was because we knew we had so much we had to explore and so much we had to develop. So actually, the change really only happened as we were a small team, and we literally spoke 10 times a day. And I think that's sort of one of the key things. I think the trick, though, was we knew we weren't going to be small forever. And so it's putting a lens on everything we're doing and saying, how are we going to scale this later? And so that was, things like, replacing technology with people. It's always looking, as you do that, do it in a way that makes it easy to digitize later.
One more question.
Why did you choose to start your company in United States versus Canada?
To be totally honest, it was the investor. It was the pressures from the investment side and the venture capital community there. I know it's growing in Toronto, but there's some great opportunities down there. We have a lot of connections, my co-founders and I. And so we chose to base there for that reason, be close to the investors. But we chose right from day one to be building the team in Toronto because of the talent here.
Thank you.